Mr. President, we are live.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, it's 6 o'clock. Before we get going, remember to speak slowly and into your mic, and turn off your microphone. Put your microphone on mute to prevent feedback when you're not speaking. Okay, this is Barberton City Council. Today's March 22nd. We are going into our committee meetings. And the first committee up is City Properties, Parks, and Recreation with Mr. Hyde.
Thank you, Mr. President. City Properties, Parks, and Recreation meeting Monday, March 22nd, 2021, 6 p.m. We are all virtual. Everyone present is accounted. We have no new requests for legislation, and I will open it up to the committee. If there's anything.
I have nothing.
I have nothing, sir.
Anything from the body? All right. Well, hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
We are adjourned at 6:01.
Okay. Next up is Public Welfare and Safety with Mr. Greer. No, excuse me, with Carla DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to bring to order the Public Welfare and Safety Committee meeting. It's March 22nd, 2021, and it is 6:02 p.m. We are virtual via GoToMeeting. All members of the committee are present, as well as all others noted. Who's caller number 2? I have one person, I'm not certain who it is, but I guess we'll just go on.
Carla,
yes.
This is DeBevick. Okay,
Yes.
It might be me. I've got my computer video and the audio is coming from the telephone because I can't reconcile the audio on my computer. So that's what I did to get in.
Okay,
so it might be me.
I just wanted to make sure I had everybody accounted for. Thank you, Mrs. Doherty. We have one request for legislation. It's a letter from Chief Persley requesting legislation appropriating $1,000 from the unappropriated Fire Prevention Education Fund to the operation and maintenance of the Fire Prevention Education Fund for the purchase of smoke detectors for Barberton residents and requesting an emergency. I think this piece of legislation speaks for itself. Does anyone have any questions? I guess, Mr. Persley, how many smoke detectors will this purchase?
So the last quote that we got was from Gale House Lumber, and they said a pallet of approximately 100 for $400. We're also partnering with the fire union, who's also going to contribute $500 to purchase the smoke detectors. So in all, we're looking at a $1,500 smoke detector purchase, which should keep us in smoke detectors for quite a long time. We're also going to look at trying to get smoke detectors for deaf people or the hearing impaired to add to our collection. So,
okay, how are those generally dispersed, Chief?
So as a resident, you fill out an application and you submit it to Fire Station 1. You show proof of residency. We schedule a time that is convenient for you, and we come out and install the detectors. Generally, we try to get at least one detector per floor outside of all sleeping areas. But again, a lot of times it depends on our quantity that we have.
And our firemen actually install them?
Yes.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions?
Mr. Bevick.
Mr. Greer.
Just where can they find this application at to fill this out?
It should be on the city's website.
Okay.
I believe we have it on the fire department's website as well.
Thank you.
Do we have these? Do we have some now? Are we running low, or
we're running very low? I think the last count I had 15 to 20 left.
Okay. And what's the lead time on once the legislation passes and actually ordering and receiving them?
That's a great question. I don't have an answer for you on that, but I can get you one.
I was just curious, just in case we put that out to the public, just so that you aren't inundated with requests before we actually have them. So, does anyone else have any questions? Do I have a motion to call for this piece of legislation?
I'll make a motion to call.
Motion made by Mr. Greer. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Griffin. Thank you. Second by Mr. Griffin. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And it passes unanimously. We have no further requests for legislation. Do we have any miscellaneous discussion? We'll start with the committee. Mr. Greer?
Thank you, Chair. Just wondering if we have an update on vehicles that were sold. I know that we sold a batch of cars or scrap vehicles using a different method than we normally do. I'm just wondering if we have an update on sales numbers, how many was sold on that aspect.
So what I will say is I according to the email thread, I believe that you began, that Mr. Flaker said that he hadn't actually received the money, but he believed that they were sold for $10,000 and that we would receive $9,075 maybe.
Yeah.
Something like that. Mr. Flaker, can you confirm or deny that?
Yeah, we did actually on Friday we did receive the money. It was $9,250. The lot of cars sold for $10,000. I do not know how many vehicles were in that lot, but the number 20 is ringing a bell.
Okay. So what we received was $9,250.
Correct.
Okay. And what method was used?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were done, Mr. Beck. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Mr. Flaker, where was that on? Did you receive the money from GovDeals? What method was used?
Yeah, the cars were sold on GovDeals this time.
Okay. 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 Sorry, Mr. Jaber.
Sorry about that, Mr. Bevick. Mr. Flaker, the GovDeals, was this the first time we've used this in over 6-7 years for the vehicles, inbound vehicles?
I think this might be the first time that they used it for the impound vehicles, but the city uses GovDeals frequently for a lot of our disposals of assets. I know last year the fire department used it some on some of their equipment that they were disposing of. Other departments sometimes use it too. I think utilities used it before to sell, like, I want to say maybe a backhoe. So we use it from time to time. This, like I said, I think this was the first time we used it for impound vehicles.
So this was the first time for the impound vehicles through GovDeals? Okay. I appreciate the receipts you did send me, then I forwarded to the other council members.
I received that.
Did you receive that, Mr. Bevick? I forwarded to you?
Yes, I did.
Okay. That was the first time if I'm correct with the information, that was the first time we used it, correct, Mr. Devick? Is that what you saw?
As far as I saw, I did not open, so I opened one of the documents. I believe it's the second email that was forwarded to me. But then the individual ordinances, I did not open all of those. I opened up the first 5 is all I got through. So I did open the second email, which had a list of, I believe it was from 2017 until present, all of the money that we've received. Is that correct? I'm just not looking at the email.
Yes. Email I got right now, it shows, Mr. Flaker forwarded me 2 emails of information. The first one was from 2017. We generated almost $65,000 from the impound lot through those years. Then from 2013, we generated $112,000 and some change for all those. And then this one right here, I'm looking at is $92.50 is what I saw in the email. So $92.50 for just that one. So it looks like this might be a better step for us if we take it this way from what I'm seeing.
Right.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Devick. And Mr. Flaker, thank you also for the emails and fast response. Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you for acquiring that information, Mr. Jaber. I appreciate it. I have a question. Maybe Mrs. Doherty can help. I've been receiving, I've spoken with I've emailed back and forth with the chief and Officer White, and they've been they've done a very good job getting back with me in a timely manner regarding truck traffic on, the complaint is from 622 31st Street. Truck traffic, the residents there believe that it's not supposed to be a truck route, but all but one of the signs have been removed for no trucks. And I believe the last email I received was from the chief, and he attached an email from Officer White indicating that they were in the process of determining whether or not it was a permissive road to determine whether or not it was indeed a truck route, but they did not believe it was. And he messaged me on Sunday and wanted to know if I had an update, and I did not. So I was just wondering if you were aware and if you knew where we stood with that.
Mrs. DeBevick, to your knowledge, was I copied on those emails?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I sent the email to the chief. I don't know if I copied you, and I should have. I apologize for that. I basically just initially wanted, the complaint also involved speeding. That was kind of the start of the complaint. And chief said that he would get someone out there, and according to this gentleman, an officer, I think, was sitting out there one day recently. So it started off as that, and then it further developed, and I should have attached you to it. But it seemed as if...
I'm unfamiliar. I believe the source of that information would be the county that would tell us whether or not it's a permissive street. And I believe Mr. Tracy's on the line, so I think he could be in a better position to answer that.
Thank you, Ms. Doherty. Mrs. Doherty?
Yes.
I will forward you that email link. The email, we have a series of emails in that conversation, so I will forward that to you. I apologize.
That's all right.
Mr. Tracy?
Yeah, so 31st Street, and I'm assuming the section that you're talking about is between Eastern Road and Cleveland Madison Road, because there's portions of it that are permissive. But that is it that specific section that you're talking about?
So yeah, so I believe this gentleman lives between, he's on 31st Street.
It's on the corner.
The address, the address is 622.
Okay. So 31st Street is permissive from, if 31st Street Northwest is permissive, 31st Street Southwest is permissive, but only until it Ys off to Cleveland Masson Road. So I don't know where that address is without looking it up, but what this has happened previously, I believe, and what we've done is we put a sign at the Y by Leach's, directing traffic, truck traffic to take Cleveland Masson Road and not use 31st Street. I think we did this last year.
Okay.
It's not a permissive street, but I mean, if you're getting a vanity delivered or a treadmill or a large item, like you might get a large truck that goes down it, they have to be able to drive down the streets. But we've tried to reroute that traffic down Cleveland Masson Road with some simple signage at this point. But that's only for the it'd be the southbound traffic. I don't believe there's a sign for northbound traffic, but I don't know that we get a lot of northbound traffic. It's just easier when it Ys, they just tend to go straight instead of veering left onto Cleveland Masson.
So I guess what the complaint is coming from, in my opinion, is from traffic from Clinton Aluminum. So I don't know. He actually sent me some video of the truck traffic that he's experiencing, and he said that originally there were no truck signs up, and there's only one remaining. They were all removed, so he doesn't know if they belong there, if they're missing, if they're not missing.
Okay, well, yeah, we'll take a look at it. We'll look at some of the previous street views on Google Maps and see if they were existing. And I mean, if we place signage at the one end, I'll confirm that there's signage on the other end. But outside of, I don't know what the other deterrent is. I mean,
right? I
don't know why people for Clinton Aluminum, and I'm just thinking out loud, would be using 31st Street. They would probably go from 224 and use Cleveland Masson and then use Eastern Road to 21. So unless their trucks are like marked Clinton Aluminum, I'm not sure.
Right.
Where they're...
So, I mean, I definitely believe that it's 31st Street from Cleveland Masson.
Okay.
As a cut through.
We can look at it.
Okay. I would appreciate that. Thank you. Oh,
You're
Mrs.
welcome.
Fry, I'm sorry. I thought you had your hand up.
You're muted.
You're muted.
You're on mute, Mrs. Fry.
Okay, I've got it. I'm glad you could see me because I can only see like 4 people. I wanted to bring up that particular complaint has been going on for quite some time, and I had an issue with that, and they had said that there were signs about no trucks, and it's my understanding, I'll have to dig in my emails and what have you, but it's my understanding that those signs were put up illegally by Norton, because the area that you're talking about, it's actually Norton, Barberton, and New Franklin. They all come together at that point.
Right. That I do know that they
and
all come.
Therefore, I do believe that the reason for the complaints is Clinton Aluminum. And also, this particular neighborhood had prepared a petition that they didn't want any. I beg your pardon?
I have the petition.
Okay. And I showed it to Lisa at the time, and that was quite a while ago. And she said, this is just paper with names on it. It doesn't really mean anything. So therefore, I just wanted to give you a little bit of background as you go forward with this. And as I said, I will go through my information that I have and let you know if anything can be determined from that. And that goes for Greg and Mrs. Doherty as well.
Thank you.
I can give you the old information that I have.
The date on the petition is November 12th, 2019.
Yeah, it was a while ago.
I didn't know if that would help you with your email search, so that's why.
Okay, well, I mean, I have them printed out. When I have a problem, I keep them all printed, so I'm not going to have to search for them other than in my paperwork. But that was an issue that we have been faced with previously. And since the fact that I mentioned that it's actually 3 different communities, I don't know how much we can do about it other than in the areas that is actually Barberton.
Okay.
Because not all of Eastern it belongs to Norton as well. And I believe those signs were on Eastern and they were told to take them down because it is a permissive street and you cannot put signs up that say no truck traffic.
Okay, what about, so Mr. Tracy, is 31st Street then permissive in that area, or is it, or are you not sure?
31st Street in Southwest from Cleveland Maslin to Eastern Road is not permissive.
Okay.
And it's entirely in Barberton. That street.
Okay.
Right. That part is, but then when you get out there, it's 2 other communities, which is the problem with that bridge out there. Because everybody's fighting about who's going to fix it.
So, Mr. Tracy, moving forward then, if that portion is not permissive, does that prevent the truck? I mean, is there an alternate route, I guess? I mean, that we could get Norton and New Franklin on board with? Are they just taking this route because it's the shortest route? Or do you... I guess I need to go look at the area.
Yeah, so I would expect most trucks would want to use Cleveland Maslin Road because it's old 21, so that's an old truck route.
Right.
And Eastern Road goes directly to 21, and Cleveland Maslin Maslin goes directly to 24. So I'm not certain why they would be using 31st Street. It doesn't, getting to and from Clinton Aluminum, I don't think that I would use that road either way.
Okay.
Eastern Road and Cleveland Maslin are going to be your primary routes to Clinton Aluminum and all the other industrial businesses that'll be there in the future.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. That's all I have. Does anyone else have anything for safety?
No, I just wanted to say that I do have some information on that too as well that I'll forward over to you, email correspondence.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yep.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Hey, Carla?
Yes.
I want to ask a question on that. Is there a cost for selling those vehicles on .gov? Is there a cost for the city?
So I'm guessing that the fees were $750 because I believe they were sold for $10,000 and we collected $9,250.
Okay. Okay.
But I'm not Mr. Flaker. So Mr. Flaker, is that correct?
Yeah, that $750 is Gov Deals portion of it. So.
Thank you.
Is that percentage based, Mr. Flaker?
What's that?
Is that percentage based? How do they?
Yeah, it's percentage based. It depends on how much the asset or item that we're selling on there sells for is what they get to keep. So.
Okay. Okay. Does anyone else have any questions or concerns for safety? Mr. Tracy?
I just want to clarify, I just checked on Google Maps and the sign we have up does not detour truck traffic. It just says Kungle Road is closed, follow detour, and hasn't gone on Cleveland Maslin Road. So that is something we could look at to keep trucks off of 31st Street as a, detour for truck traffic to keep them off of that section of 31st.
Okay.
I couldn't remember what the sign said.
Okay, thank you. Anyone have anything else? Hearing nothing, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Griffin. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Greer. We are adjourned at 6:24.
Okay, next up is Rules, Marketing, and Development with Mr. Griffin.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to call this meeting to order today, Rules, Marketing, and Development. Today is March 22nd. We are meeting virtual, all members present and all others noted. Tonight we have no requests for legislation, but we do have for discussion, we do have ongoing legislation on our public speaking before council. And I think everybody has a copy of the new revised procedures that we're going to use. Does anyone have a question on that that they would like to talk about from our committee or the body?
Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Heidig.
Thank you, Chairman. If everybody is in agreement that these rules are good to go, then we can instruct the clerk to add them to the agenda next week for a vote.
Yes. Does everyone agree with these rules? Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you. We will be asking the clerk to put these on next week's agenda, so we can take care of this matter and pass it, so we can start abiding by it for the public. So if we don't have anything else, does anyone have anything else for rules marketing?
Mr. Griffin?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Chair. First, I want to thank Mr. Heidig for getting that public speaking, all questions answered. I appreciate that, Mr. Heidig. Mr. Griffin, I was wondering if you can work with Miss Nina in the planning department, planning committee, for if we can get some kind of emails or information when somebody applies for a new business in our ward. I brought this up earlier in the year, last year. I got 2 letters this week on Friday through my mail. One was for approval and one was for denial. I had no information about it until I had one of my customers come in and say, hey, there's a fellow trucking towing company got denied on Barber Road, and I didn't know nothing about it until I got my mail. Is there a way we can set something up with the rules, Mr. Griffin, where they have to send us an email or some kind of information when they do apply, not when they are denied or approved?
Mr. Heidig, you have a question?
Yes, to answer Councilor Jaber there, I believe that would have to come from Director Hunt. I don't think that could actually be in a council rule. The council rules just govern how we govern ourselves. But I do believe that Director Hunt could indeed send that information to everybody there. Director, if I'm wrong, please tell me. Thank you.
Mr. Hunt?
Yeah, sorry, my computer's delayed here a minute. So for the development code, I think we just have to respond to the applicant. There's nothing in there about responding to council. We generally, as a courtesy, obviously include any letters that are zoning compliance related in the council member's mailbox. These were timely requests. I don't think that you can't change the development code without legislative action. So if a business is denied, it's because they're not able to locate there per the development code and their underlying zoning. So it probably won't change the outcome if someone is denied, is what I'm getting at.
I respect that, Mr. Hunt, but we're just wondering, myself and other council members, if we get some kind of email or something that says a business applied for this kind of business in your ward. just like I said, just for communication with other council members and also communication with the constituents and other business owners in our area, in our ward. Thank you.
Mr. Hunt. Mr. Hunt, do you hear me? Yes, Mrs. Colburn.
Not every business that applies wants their information given out until they've gotten approval and the things that they need. So just sending it to a council person may even jeopardize them moving in. So sometimes you have to look at the whole process. You can't just because somebody walks in and applies for something, say we should all be notified.
Maybe thank you, Mrs. Coburn. Maybe we can ask the business owner who's applying that question. Like I said, just a courtesy thing. I felt like the communication was not there again. Same situation we had last year when I first started council. We brought this up. Thank you.
Mr. Heidi.
Thank you, Chair. If I may, Councilor Angeloff would probably know this better than I, but once a business applies, isn't that, and it's accepted into the agenda of the Planning Commission, isn't that a public record as it is?
I don't know if it's a public record. I'm sure it is. But, you know, council does legislation and department heads and that do administration work. So that's how it comes down. So I don't know. Mr. Hunt, you can answer that question.
Oh, it is a public record. Yes. When anyone submits, it's public record. Is that the answer to your question, Councilman Heide?
It does, yes, because what I'm getting at is I don't think there needs to be a rule or legislative. We all know what the commissions are, so we could easily, the day before or a couple of days before, request that. Thank you.
And just piggyback off of that too, Mrs. Angeloff. This way we can just talk to our neighbors and constituents and ask them what they think about this business if they do come in. This way we can get a pre-start and some footsteps in the neighborhood and just talk to the neighbors about this future business coming in. Some might approve, some might not approve. Again, just communication with this. I appreciate your time.
Mr. Jaber, you have to remember that we have a development code. It either says yes or it says no. And that's what Mr. Hunt and his office, that's their responsibility. If they say no, when council gets involved and you're saying, I can't, you know, why can't they have this? Why can't they then it just stirs up a lot of problems. Mr. Hunt and his staff have a development code that they go by, and some are okay, some they'll want more information and they'll bring that in next month, that type thing. So I think that not because I'm chair on planning. I've worked with planning for many, many years, and they have rules and regulations they have to go by too, and that's part of that development code. Thank you.
Mr. Jaber?
Yes, sir.
I think what you really want to know is if the business is in compliance, they either get it or they don't. So there wouldn't be no reason to talk to neighbors or people next door if they were denied because they weren't in compliance. I can't see the reason to let people know about a business and they're not compliant. Am I correct, Mr.
Yes,
Heide?
But if we start our, seeing if they want to rezone it, this way we can just prepare ourselves talking with it. Again, just communication. I thought there was a lack of communication with this. I mean, even though the approval one, I got one for approval in my ward, and I had no idea about it. So again, I just trying to wish we can get some more communication, like I requested last year about this. Just a quick question, Mr. Angeloff, did you get notified about this on planning?
No, I do not.
I'm thinking you should at least definitely get some kind of communication with that, since you're on the planning committee.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Heidi.
Thank you, Chair. I think a lot of these problems are going to be settled once the Rules Committee dealing with CBDG budgets and different things like that, coupled with the Planning Committee, when we get this development code and zoning, all this reworked, I think this is going to answer a lot of our questions there. And I know it's going to take time. I spoke with Director Hunt today about different funds available, different ways to get shore up the revenue that we would need to have this done. But I think a lot of these problems are going to be addressed in that. And I'm hoping that between the two committees, the administration, between planning department and commission, we can all get together and bring something up that's actually going to be more modern than what we've been dealing with. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Heidig, for that explanation. Mr. Jaber, does that sound satisfactory to you?
I'm still kind of feeling there's a lack of communication. Like I said, email takes 2-3 minutes, but I can respect you guys' reasoning. But like I said, the one was approved and one was denied. I mean, it'd be nice to know pre-time, which one applied, since it is public records. But I said we'll follow Mr. Hunt's lead. We'll go from there. I appreciate your time, Mr. Hunt. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thanks everyone for their comment on this. Do we have any more discussion on this particular matter or anything else for rules? Hearing none, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Heidig. Rules, Market, and Development adjourn at 6:37.
Okay, next up is City Utilities with Mrs. Coburn.
Thank you, Mr. President. City Utilities, I'd like to call the City Utilities to order. It's March 22nd. All members are virtual and guests as noted. We have a letter from the mayor requesting a grant from the Barberton Community Foundation for the foundation field lighting upgrade, and we'd like to make this an emergency. We've discussed the lighting, so is there any other discussion from the committee about this lighting? Any discussion from the...
Mrs. Coburn, I just have a question.
Okay.
Are we gonna put a number value on this or a price on this, or are we going to just... I don't know if that's necessary to do. I'm just asking what the plan
Mr.
is.
Mayor, do you have an answer for that?
Yeah, I left the amount off. The foundation only has a little bit of money to grant. I want to see, wait until the budget passes and then see where we are financially with general fund money, and then make application then. Don't want to apply for something if we don't have the rest of the money to support the remainder of the program or project. So I left it blank so we can assess everything after the budget passes and see where we are. If the budget passes and this passes, then I will notify council of the amount, the appropriate amount that we'll be applying for.
Thank you.
Okay.
Does that answer your question, Mrs. Debevic?
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Coburn. I just have one more question for the mayor based on his response. Is there any way to apply to set up a special fund for this and apply for the grant multiple times based on their limited ability to grant this year in particular?
That would come, I would have discussions with the foundation on best way to approach this.
Okay.
They have rules and regulations, especially from an audit standpoint, that they have to follow. So I'm not sure if they're able to do that. This is a lot different than awarding a grant for the schools. I know that came up previously. That was a grant for the schools that was approved every year. It wasn't kind of foreshadowing future grants. They had to be approved every year. So not saying it's impossible, but that's something we have to discuss. And I know they'll have to discuss with their legal team and possible their audit, depending on what their audit goes by.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have, Mrs. Coburn. That was my only question. I'll make a motion that we call for this piece of legislation.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Carol Fry, I saw your hand but didn't hear your voice.
I'll second it.
All in favor? Yeah.
Aye.
All in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the motion carries. The other thing we have is the draft resolution titled Memorandum of Understanding, Summit County Department of Public Health. Is there any discussion on that? We discussed it in emergency meeting last week. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, we'll move on to miscellaneous. Is there any miscellaneous discussion for utilities? Mr. Greer.
Thank you. Wait a second. Thank you, Chair. I sent a brief email, and this came up before with the gas line project over here on 5th Street and Lincoln. But I was wondering if we can just get some confirmation. Mr. Tracy just sent an email, which I can forward to you with some general questions that I was getting. But was wondering the timeline again for the project on 5th Street and Lincoln area, that gas project that's working on right now, when it's going to be completed, I guess.
Okay, Mr. Tracy?
When we met with the gas company back in February, they were thinking probably end of May, somewhere in June, probably early June, to have it all. That'd be restoration and everything done.
Okay. And I thank you, Mr. Tracy, for responding to those questions. And Chair, I'll forward you that email. It was general questions.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I didn't think you had given us an exact date when they would start. They change it on an hourly basis. Are there any other remarks?
Mr. Greer, can you forward that to me also, please? I've had a couple people ask about that.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
I'll forward it to everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Greer.
Mrs. Coburn?
Yes.
I just have one question for Mr. Tracy. Did you say complete restoration by the end of June? Because I've been getting a lot of calls about 5th Street.
Yeah, that's what he did say, was that they hope to have the complete restoration.
No, we're talking about the gas line project.
Just the gas line. Gas line. Okay. All right.
Yeah, ODOT will be ready to do 619 as soon as they're able, but we'll probably hold them off until the gas company is done. They were on Griffin Street just the other day. Honestly, as hard as it has been to manage that road through the winter and continually now, it was probably a little bit of a blessing that it wasn't done last year, because they were all over it just last week.
So we may not see this completed this year, correct?
No. You're going to see 619, the 5th Street portion of it will be paved this year, and probably as soon as the gas company's done.
Okay. Thank you. I'll pass it on.
Okay. Is there any other information or remarks for utilities?
Ms. Coburn?
Yes, Mr. Jabers.
Thank you. Can you just give me the facts on who's liable for utilities from the street to the house, to the curb, or to the middle of the road? Like somebody's water's backed up, or who'd be liable for that? The homeowner, the city? Because I've had a couple people's lines backed up, and they're trying to blame the city, the homeowner, the renter. The renter's trying to blame the homeowner. Who is liable? Do you know exactly? To what part of the street?
Tracy would be the one to answer us that question.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Tracy.
It depends on the situation, Councilman Jaber, but the homeowner is responsible for their lateral from inside the home all the way to the sewer main. and the connection at the sewer main.
Okay, so up to the sewer main, correct? You just said? Awesome, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tracy.
You're welcome.
Is there anything else? Hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
Thank you, Carla. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
We are adjourned at 6:45.
Okay, thank you. Next up is Finance and Personnel and Mrs. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Finance and Personnel Committee will come to order. It is March 22nd, Monday. The time is 6:44, and we are meeting virtually. All members of the committee are present, as well as all council members and guests as noted on my agenda sheet. We have a couple pieces of legislation that have been requested. The first is a letter from Mayor Judge requesting an ordinance extending the operation of the current JED agreement with the City of Norton for another 25-year period per the original agreement signed in 1997. The JED stands for Joint Economic Development District, or Joint Economic Development Zones. These areas are areas where the City of Norton and Barberton share the income tax revenue, and it is based on water usage. There are different formulas regarding how much of a percentage each community gets in the different areas of the JEDs. These payments are made to the City of Barberton on a quarterly basis. Does anyone have any questions about this agreement? I can't see hands, so if anybody has a question, if you would just ask to speak, I will let you speak. Okay. Hearing none, do I have a motion to call for this piece of legislation?
I'll make a motion, Mrs. Fry.
Thank you, Mrs. DeBevick. Motion made by Mrs. DeBevick and seconded by Mrs.
I'll second.
Angeloff. Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, it passes unanimously. The next piece of legislation that we have on the agenda for this evening is a letter from Mr. Trevor Hunt, and this is requesting legislation to pay an invoice in the amount of $20,000 to the Barberton Public Library, who recently purchased audio-visual equipment. This equipment was related to the COVID crisis and was funded through CDBG CARES Act money. The invoice was received prior to the purchase order being established. This piece of legislation is necessary because the purchase order is dated after the date of the invoice. The library applied for a grant through the city planning department for HVAC work and audiovisual equipment to conduct meetings. The library got 3 different quotes, and this $20,000 is to reimburse the library for this equipment and what have you from the grant. Mr. Hunt, do you have any comments about this particular piece of legislation?
Yeah, I think you did. Councilwoman Fry, I think you did a nice job of summarizing everything. This was applied for back in December by the library. Due to the COVID situation, they wanted to update some learning equipment that they had, and knowing the pandemic, this equipment allowed them to do things a little bit more efficiently and spaced out. And they applied to the city for our COVID CARES Act money. So we did work with them, and that's the nature of this request. And sorry that it came through late. I think at the end of the year, we didn't know the total amount. Initially, they had asked for more than 20 grand, but we wanted to assist them, but we didn't know the total amount. So that's in part the reason why it comes in after the fact. So.
Thank you very much. And I had called Stacy today, and this is a combination of CDBG money and COVID money, correct? Mr. Hunt?
It's all
it's all
money
COVID.
It's all CDBG money through the CARES Act COVID program.
Okay, through the CARES Act. And this isn't for the entire amount. This is just what they were granted, correct?
Exactly. I believe the total project was upwards of $50,000.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Hunt. Okay, does anybody have any questions regarding this piece of legislation? I don't see any hands. Does anybody have anything to say? You can just speak up if so. Okay, hearing none, do I have a motion to call for this?
I'll make a motion.
Mrs. Angeloff? Motion made by Mrs. Angeloff. Do I have a second?
I'll second
okay,
it.
Seconded by Mrs. DeBevick. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, that passes unanimously as well. All right, the third piece of legislation that we were given tonight is a letter from the law director, Mrs. Lisa Polish Miller, requesting a draft ordinance approving payment to Browse McDowell in the amount of $10,875 for legal services rendered. Council approval is needed because the invoice is in excess of $3,000 and is dated prior to the purchase order. These monies are needed on an emergency basis in order to pay the vendor as soon as possible. One reading is being requested. Do I have any questions about this? Okay. Hearing none. Do I have a motion to call for this? Mrs. Angeloff made a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it, Mrs. Fry.
Thank you, Mrs. DeBevick. Seconded by Mrs. DeBevick. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, that also passes unanimously. We also have some legislation that will be on the agenda on March 29th. And the first is an ordinance authorizing the Director of Finance to pay an invoice to Huntington Bank for the Clerk of Court's yearly bank fees in the amount of $6,433.85 and declaring an emergency. And I know we had some questions last week, and I received a letter from Diana Stevenson, who is the Clerk of Courts, and I'm going to read it to explain the bank fees. Huntington Bank bills our bank fees for our 3 accounts, criminal, civil, and rental escrow, on a yearly basis. The invoice is contained in December's monthly bank statement, which is received in January. This is the first year the fees have been over $5,000. I cannot submit a PO prior to the end of the year because I do not receive the invoice until January. Because of the timing of the invoice, I need council approval because I have to create the purchase after I received the invoice, and it is over $3,000 limit. Therefore, I'm requesting approval from City Council for the expenditure for the PO created after the date of the invoice. I am further requesting that the matter be considered after one reading so that the fees can be paid in an expeditious manner. Are there any questions about Mrs. Stevenson's letter and her explanation? Okay. We have quite a few other pieces of legislation on the agenda for voting next week, and I'm just going to read them off unless anybody has questions. We have ordinance number 12, 2021, which is the operating and capital budget, and that will be the third reading. We will also have second readings on the next 5 ordinances, which are all note ordinances. The first is a note ordinance for the 9th Street Northeast Improvement Program, which will be in the amount of $540,000. The second is ordinance number 18-2021, which is also a note ordinance for the meter reading replacement project. This note will be in the amount of $325,000. The next note is ordinance number 2021. This is a note ordinance for the 5th Street Northeast Lincoln Avenue Stormwater Project. This note will be in the amount of $200,000. The next ordinance is ordinance number 20-2021, and this is also a note ordinance for the Street and Road Improvement Project, and this note will be in the amount of $200,000. The last ordinance is ordinance number 21-2021, which is also a note ordinance for the trickling filter system at the wastewater treatment plant. This note will be in the amount of $125,000. As I said, these will be the second reading, and we do have to pass these next week in order for them to go out for bid for the notes. And do I have any? What's going on with the music?
Not me.
Okay, do I have...
Someone called in and then they hung up.
Oh, okay. What, do I have any questions about any of the pieces of legislation that I just referenced that we will be voting on next week? Seeing no hands and hearing nothing, I guess everything is in order and everybody's fine with all of the legislation. Therefore, does anybody have any other issues that they would like to discuss regarding finance?
Mrs. Fry, if I may.
Surely.
Just a couple things. I know it was brought up a couple weeks ago, kind of what the interest rates are for notes right now. I did look into that. The going interest rates are anywhere from 0.2% to 0.25%. So we're looking to save about 1.75 to 1.8% in interest this year on our note issuance. Yeah, people I was speaking with, it's just because there's the people are returning to the market. They're willing to invest their money. And we're catching it at a good time too, because there's going to be a jobs report on April 2nd, which that could dictate the interest rates going up a little bit more if the job reports come back favorable, meaning more people have jobs and everything. More people that have jobs, higher the interest rates go up. So we should be getting in right before that. So we're probably looking anywhere from 0.2 to 0.25% on an interest rate. On the income tax side of things, I do want to bring to everyone's attention, as everyone's aware, the federal government moved the tax day back by a month. The federal government did. However, that does not affect city tax. City tax is governed by ORC, and it goes based upon state income tax due date. The state of Ohio has not switched the due date as of yet for income tax, so city income tax is still due April 15th.
Okay. Okay. Did you have anything else, Mr. Flaker?
No, that is all. If income tax date does change, I will notify everyone. But like I said, as of now, April 15th still.
Okay. I wanted to ask, how did the drive-through go?
We only had 4 people make use of it on Saturday. So helped out the 4 individuals that did come through. So that's not a complete waste. So.
Okay. All right. Does anyone else? Thank you, Mr. Flaker. Does anyone else have any other questions for finance? Hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn? Mrs. Angeloff made a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Mrs. DeBevick seconded the motion, and we are adjourned at 6:59 p.m. Thank you.
Okay, that ends our committee reports. We'll just go right into our committee of the whole meeting. Today is Monday, March 22nd, 2021. This is Barberton City Council. This is a committee of the whole meetings. I call this meeting to order at 7 o'clock. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Mrs. Angeloff.
Here.
Mrs. Coburn. Here.
Here.
Mrs. Fry.
Here.
Mr. Greer.
Present.
Mr. Griffin.
Here.
Mr. Heidick.
Here.
Mr. Jaber.
Here.
Mr. Medgens is here.
That's right. Okay, since we're starting before 7:30, Council Rule 103 states that regular and committee of the whole meetings shall start at 7:30 p.m. Since we are starting earlier than this, we need to invoke Council Rule 702. Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to make a motion to invoke Council Rule 702 to suspend Council Rule 103.
Thank you, and Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will second the motion to invoke 702.
Thank you. A motion was made by Mrs. DeBevick, second by Mr. Heidick, to invoke Council Rule 702 to suspend Council Rule 103. Are there any remarks? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay, passes. Citizens addressing council.
There are none.
Thank you. We will go right into our committee reports. First committee up is Mrs. Angeloff with Planning, Annexation, and Code.
Thank you, Mr. President. Planning, Annexation, and Codes met March 15th at 6:25. It was virtual GoToMeeting. All members were present, along with all of council and other guests as noted on my sheet. Topics of discussion, legislation request, we had none at this time. Miscellaneous discussion, it was about the Ryan homes, the plot that they had sent over to the Planning Commission, and they did say there was no dead-end roads. Council members are hearing a lot that if the townhouses aren't sold, that they will turn into AMHA housing. That's all rumors and no truth. I do, if it's okay with Mr. President, I'd like to go ahead and give some facts about the Planning Commission meeting that was on Wednesday, March 17th.
Go for it.
Thank you. It was they were to approve the subdivision phase 1, and it was approved as in accordance to the 2006 Barberton Master Plan. These townhouses, this is something new. I'm just going to read it down the line. All new appliances. Property owners own the land and the house. The homeowners association, they'll do the grass cutting, snow removal, and mulching. They will be putting a 6-foot white vinyl fence between each of the backyards, but not to block the back of the property. Each townhouse will have a patio on the 2nd floor, which is actually the living area. There will be a small patio there. They will not be destroying any of the existing trees that are facing east. The street is a little wider. It's 27 foot wide, and there will be parking on one side, and that is per the fire code. Yes, there'll be street lighting and street trees. The trees will be according to what we have in the development code. The maintenance of the pond, that is part of the HOA. And Ryan Homes is not selling or promoting these as rentals. And with that, I pass.
Thank you very much. Excuse me. Next up is streets, lighting, and sidewalk, and Mr. Greer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Street, sidewalk, and lighting met March 15th, 2021 at 6:02 p.m. and we were virtual. All committee members were present and guests and council members noted on my sheet. There were topics of discussion. There was no request for legislation. Miscellaneous discussion. I just brought up the fact that I talked with Mr. Tracy about alternative methods and new technologies for road repairs. And Mr. Tracy stated that they're actively looking into more effective and efficient ways to repair our roads. And asked the council if anyone had any ideas, please forward them to Mr. Tracy. Second thing on miscellaneous discussion is I inquired about the road list for the 2021. This is the residential road list that I inquired about. There is no residential list yet. Because we're waiting on the budget. However, everything was put to bid already, but we're just waiting on the budget to pass to see about the final list on moving things around, and all that stuff just hinges on the budget. Mrs. Angeloff and Mrs. Fry both brought up information about Cold Patch, and Mr. Heidick asked about the 619 project. And with that, well, street, sidewalk, and lighting adjourned at 6:17 p.m. And with that, I pass.
Thank you very much. Next up is Mrs. Colburn with City Utilities.
Thank you, Mr. President. City Utilities met this evening. We were all virtual. We had a letter from the mayor requesting a grant from the Barberton Community Foundation for the foundation field lighting upgrade. We will be looking at the budget prior to putting a money amount on that application, and we will be making it an emergency. It passed, and we will be calling for that. This other legislation we have is the Memorandum of Understanding with Summit County Department of Public Health. This is for the testing that's done on all of our sites where the EPA testing has to be a certain number. This is a regular item we do every 5 years or 3 years. I can't remember. Miscellaneous discussion was about the gas line on 5th, and that should be done by the end of June. and ODOT should start paving 619 just as quickly as the gas company is finished. We had no other discussion, and with that we adjourned, and with that I pass.
Thank you. Next up is Mrs. DeBevick with Public Welfare and Safety.
Thank you, Mr. President. Public Welfare and Safety met this evening, March 22nd, virtual via GoToMeeting. All committee members were present, as well as all of theirs noted. We had one new request for legislation. It was a letter from Chief Pursley requesting legislation appropriating $1,000 from the Unappropriated Fire Prevention Education Fund to the operation and maintenance of the Fire Prevention Education Fund for the purchase of smoke detectors for Barberton residents and requesting an emergency. Mr. Pursley informed us that last time he got an estimate or a bid, it was from Gale House, and a pallet of about 100 smoke detectors was $400. He also indicated that the fire union was going to contribute an additional $500 to this $1,000, giving us a total of $1,500 to purchase smoke detectors. As a resident, the application is available on the Barberton City website and the fire department website, we believe. And the application, is filled out, and then the firemen will come out and install those. So we will be voting on that piece of legislation. We also had some miscellaneous discussion. The first one involving some questions regarding the last fleet of scrap and salvage vehicles that we approved, and how they were sold and how much they were sold for. The lot was sold for $10,000 via Gov Deals, and we received $9,250. And Mr. Flaker indicated that was the amount that Gov Deals takes is percentage based. We also had some discussion regarding a complaint that I've received regarding truck traffic and speeding on 31st Street Southwest to Eastern Road. And Mr. Tracy is going to look into whether or not he doesn't believe that area is permissive, and what we can do to try to remedy that. And we adjourned at 6:24. And with that, I will pass. However, Mr. President?
Yes?
Can I excuse myself for a few minutes to get some Tylenol? I had the vaccine today, and I have a fever, and I want to Tylenol.
No problem. I understand. I went through the same thing last week.
Okay, so I'm coming right back. I'm just leaving the room to get some Tylenol. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Next up is Rules, Marketing, and Development. Mr. Griffin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Rules, Marketing, and Development met today on March 22nd. We are all meeting virtual. All members were present and others as noted. We had no requests for legislation. We did have miscellaneous discussion. We talk about procedures for transmitting and delivering of letters and materials to be said at council. And we're going to take that out of committee probably next week, then vote on it. And we also had a discussion about businesses applying to relocate here in Barberton and being approved and not complying with our codes and, various things like that. With that, we made a motion to adjourn, and I pass, sir.
Okay, thank you. Next up is Environmental Health and Social Services with Mr. Jaber.
Oops. Thank you, Mr. President. Environmental Social Health Services met March 15th at 6:18. We met virtual. All members were present. No, we had no new request for legislation. We had discussion. Was brought up. We thanked the mayor for setting up the vaccination at the church. We also discussed the health committee. The health meeting will be this Wednesday at 4:30. And that I will pass. We adjourn, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is City Properties, Parks, and Recreation with Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Mr. President. City Properties, Parks, and Recreation met today, March 22nd, 2021, 6 p.m. Everybody was present and accounted. We had no new requests for legislation and no miscellaneous discussion. We adjourned at 6:01. However, because we skipped committee of the whole last week, we also met Monday, March 8th, 2021. Again, everybody was accounted and present. No request for legislation then. Miscellaneous discussions centered around the skate park. Director Tracy pointed out they did do a check of the utilities for the location over by Decker, which turned out pretty well. President Medges commented that he would like to see private funding help out with this endeavor. Councilor Angeloff was questioning the insurance. And Councilor Greer, it looks like my wrote down, was looking to Clinton for prices of everything. And with that one, we adjourned at 6:10. With that, I pass.
Thank you. Next up is Finance and Personnel, Mrs. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Finance and Personnel Committee met tonight. The meeting began at 6:44. It was a virtual meeting. All members of the committee were present, as well as all council members and guests as noted on my sheet. We had 3 pieces of legislation, requests for legislation tonight. The first was a letter from Mayor Judge requesting an ordinance extending the operation of the current JET agreement with the City of Norton for another 25-year period per the original agreement, which was signed in 1997. I just explained several things about the JED. They are standard things that will stay the same throughout the new contract, and no one had any questions about the JED, and we passed it unanimously to get it out of committee. The second piece of legislation requests for legislation was a letter from Mr. Trevor Hunt, requesting legislation to pay an invoice in the amount of $20,000 to the Barberton Public Library, who recently purchased audiovisual equipment. This equipment was related to the COVID crisis and was funded through CDBG CARES Act money. The invoice was received prior to the purchase order being established. The library had applied for a grant through the city planning department for HVAC work and audiovisual equipment to conduct meetings to help how they operated during the pandemic. And the library got 3 quotes for this work. It was probably, the project was over $50,000, but with the grant, you know, 20,000 of that will be paid for. This is a reimbursement to the library because we received the money for them through the CARES Act. There were no questions about that either. Mr. Hunt did explain the details of that piece of legislation. The last request for legislation was a letter from the law director, Mrs. Lisa Kolish-Miller, requesting a draft ordinance approving payment to Browse McDowell in the amount of $10,875 for legal services rendered. Council approval is needed because the invoice is in excess of $3,000 and is dated prior to the purchase order. These monies are needed on an emergency basis in order to pay the vendor as soon as possible, so 1 reading has been requested. We have other pieces of legislation that were brought out of committee previously and will be voted on at the March 29 legislative meeting. The first is an ordinance titled Authorized Payment to Huntington Bank. This is an ordinance authorizing the Director of Finance to pay an invoice to Huntington Bank for the Clerk of Court's yearly bank fees in the amount of $6,433.85 and declaring an emergency. I read a letter that was sent to us by Mrs. Diane Stevenson, who is the Clerk of Courts. Other items that will be on the agenda for next week will be the third reading of the 2021 operating and capital budget, the second and final reading on the note ordinances. These have to be passed in order for Jeremy to go out for bid for these notes. The first is the 9th Street Northeast Improvement Program, which will be notes in the amount of $540,000. The second is note ordinance for the meter reading system replacement project, which will be in the amount of $325,000. The third ordinance for the notes is a note ordinance for the 5th Street Northeast Lincoln Avenue Stormwater Project in the amount of $200,000. And the next is a note ordinance for street and road improvement projects, and this will be in the amount of $200,000. And the final note ordinance is for the trickling filter system at the wastewater treatment plant, and that will be in the amount of $125,000. During miscellaneous discussion, Mr. Flaker updated us on the note ordinance interest rates, and he has done some research on this, and he believes that we should get an interest rate of between 0.2 to 0.25, and this would save the city approximately 1.75% in interest this year. He also updated us on the income tax. The due date has been back for federal income tax has been moved back 1 month, but the state of Ohio has not been changed. So April 15th, 2021 will be the due date for your state taxes. I asked him about the drive-through event that they had on Saturday for people for the RETA tax filing for their city taxes, and only 4 people showed up. And with that, finance and personnel will close.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, mayor's report.
Thank you, Mr. President. A few things to go over here. First, want to congratulate the VFW. You know, a small town like this, we're all very close, and to have an asset like the VFW experience the fire that they had a little less than a year ago, pretty traumatic, especially that they're one of the anchors in downtown. So it was great to see them reopen last week. They've done a beautiful job in there, and I know that it's spurring some activity with some additional members. So that's great to see. We're continuing with our business visits. Had a great one just last week, and I won't go into too many details because they're getting ready to go through. We're working with them on a major expansion, but it's a company that's out of the country that's looking at a major investment in redoing this business, and they're very excited about it. They make pieces and parts that touch the automotive industry, and some pieces and parts that went to NASA and the medical industry, and a lot of different things. So this will increase their capacity by quite a bit. So we're working through those steps. But we're looking at doing 20 business visits this year, working with Team Neo, Jobs Ohio, and Greater Akron Chamber of Commerce. So a lot of great things on that front. On the COVID front, cases, in Ohio, we've gone over 1 million cases. So we started plateauing there with the number of cases of COVID, but it's starting to go up a little bit. Obviously, nowhere near where we were a few months ago, but still going up. The scary thing is that COVID cases are going up slightly, but the number of variant cases throughout the country are going up a lot quicker. So they're still doing a lot of research into the variants and They just came out with a new one, the California one. I'm not sure how they are assigning names to it and what the difference is in every variant is. And there could be very slight differences, but they've all got different names. As we move through this here, I got a lot of information. I know you don't want to get into the stats too much, but looking at doing another mass vaccination here in the area, hopefully have more information soon on that. Are looking at doing homebound vaccines for shut-ins or those that may not be shut in, but still, if we can hit a neighborhood, that'd be great. So the state has completed over 1.6 million vaccines, and you've got another 2.8 million in the state that are in transition. So they've had the first shot, but not the second shot. So over the next few weeks, you'll see that number flip-flop quite a bit. Obviously, the state has come down, and anyone starting last week, anyone that is 40 and over is eligible to receive the vaccination. Starting here the end of March, let me get the exact date, the 29th, I believe. Yes, March 29th, any Ohioan 16 years of age and older will be eligible for the vaccine. So those in that age group can start making appointments now, but not until the 29th can they get the vaccine.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I'm so sorry to interrupt. This is Doherty. The governor came out today, Governor DeWine came out today and lowered the age to anyone 16 and above.
Yes, that starts the 29th.
No, he moved it up a week.
Oh, all right. Well, thank you very much for that. So things obviously are changing quicker than we can get the information out. So moved it up a week, 16 over. So I try to get on the website, a few of the websites, and everyone seems to be booked and no appointments, no available vaccines in the general area. But they say keep trying. Try on some of those off hours to get through, and if there's vaccine available, then you can schedule for it. We're still working with the U.S. Treasury and all of our partners from that level down on the uses for the American Rescue Plan Act. So as I mentioned last week, have a committee put together, and more information will come out to council on this, but talk to Councilwoman Fry about being the designated representative from City Council to sit on a committee I'm putting together, and then to communicate back and forth with City Council on that. So more information hopefully comes very soon, but we're waiting on the U.S. Treasury. Other than that, the weather's getting nicer. People are out and about, but it's still important to remember to follow all the mandates and different rules. Spring break is going on over the next few weeks with colleges, and a great fear in the southern states where a lot of kids go to of spikes happening over the next few weeks because of spring break. So I know Florida and Miami in particular has put in some curfews. So just kind of still charting everything. This is going on over a year that the city of Barberton, the state, the county, and the nation has been in a state of emergency. So this is something that's very serious. And as I mentioned, if there's things that we may not be communicating to you, or you think like the skate park, we're still working on the skate park, but things like COVID, obviously they're changing every minute at times. So really keeping that's taken up a lot of our time in terms of making sure we have the most accurate information and we're getting that out. So please bear with us, continue to bear with us as we're getting through this. Very, very busy on all these fronts, and we're the information trickles down to us, and we get it, like from Governor DeWine, the same time the public gets it. So we have to ascertain that information, we have to disseminate it, we have to put it all together, so we don't have any forward knowledge before general public. But if you have any questions on specific stats or cases in the state versus the county versus our zip code, or hospitalizations versus death versus presumed recovered, or demographics, we've got all those analytics So just kind of going through all that. Is there any questions on COVID? So, okay, as soon as I get more information on the stimulus bill and what that specifically means on the use for the city, we'll get that out to everybody and start having those conversations. In terms of the budget, I did receive one additional question this weekend. Councilwoman Fry asked, and I'm sorry, maybe I should wait until we get to the budget meeting, but page 57, Summit County PSGP, $130,000. So this is 10% of part of our CARES Act money from the county that we're holding back in case through an audit trail they look back and say, wait a minute, it wasn't used the appropriate way, you have to pay some back. So, if you remember, we got CARES Act money from different sources. And so we put some money aside, as we did in other areas, to make sure that through an audit that we could cover ourselves, because the U.S. Treasury likes to change the rules quite often without a lot of knowledge to us. So that's what that was. That was the only question I got this weekend. So with that, Mr. President, I will pass.
Thank you very much. Any remarks from the good of the body or department heads?
Mr. President.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. President. First, I want to say thanks again for everybody that came out, Mr. Greer, Mr. Devevic, Beth McKinney, Mayor Judge at the VFW. It was awesome seeing everybody together, and that COVID really set us back for the whole year. Missed seeing everybody out and hanging out. It was nice to sit on the same table with Justin and Carla, and very nice seeing everybody there. Second, Alice Corner Restaurant opened back up. It was awesome to see that downtown. Hopefully everybody can go out and see that. The Cave opened up today, downtown on the Ward 4, and it's also good to see that downtown open up again. During the St. Patrick's Day, it was a very, very busy week. Busy day down there. The Green Diamond, M&M, Block 7, Ignite, The Corner. I mean, all those restaurants and bars downtown were really, really doing pretty good. It was nice to see that. Also, I don't know if you guys heard, but June 18th, Key Bank on Worcester Road will be closing down. Again, Key Bank on Worcester Road, 510 Worcester Road, across the street from McDonald's, will be closing down. That was one of the sites that the Burger King was looking at. I spoke with Mr. Willis, the owner of Burger King, that was looking into it, and he did not know about it. That's closing down. So he was very, very pumped up about it, and he seemed very interested. I told him to speak to the mayor and Mr. Hunt. I think I sent you guys some emails earlier last year with this information. If you guys can reach out to him, Mr. Hunt, and speak to him, it'd be nice to get on board and hopefully maybe take a jump on this and get Burger King downtown. And also, with nicer weather, Mr. President, you always did a good job with the community cleanup. I was wondering if you can try to set that up for us, where we can all have maybe combine, try to do a community cleanup each ward, that we work as a team. Maybe we can start out with Ward 6, then go down, or Ward 1 and go up. And maybe we can set up different dates for different wards. But I think if we do it all together in each ward, instead of having different wards, different day, the same day, that way we do better as a team, work as a team. And with that, sir, I pass. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Mr. President.
Go for
it. Everybody probably seen that our councilwoman, county councilwoman Bethany McKinney, was recently in the paper with nurse and stuff about the vaccination registrations and how they were registering a lot. So Councilwoman McKinney set up a time to actually help everybody and show everybody how to register. That's going to be tomorrow. It's short notice, but they plan on having multiple events. But tomorrow, 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. at the Barberton Library, anybody is welcome to come, and she will utilizes the resources that the library has to show everybody how to navigate and dodge and weave and get through that system to try to get registered. And with any luck, people may be able to register there before they leave. again, with any luck. But if they not, they'll go home with the knowledge of knowing how to. So again, that's at 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. tomorrow at the Barberton Public Library. And she does plan on having future events too as well.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Yes, I'd like to piggyback off of that. What Justin Greer said about Mrs. McKinney. Her and the judge, they helped at least 15 people, some of my wife's relatives. They really did a fantastic job of helping people get the shot. So I'd like to, thank them and their staff and, for helping us. So.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Mr. President.
Okay, go for it.
I kind of want to follow Mr. Greer and Mr. Griffin's comments and just say that while I'm upset with Bethany right now because I don't feel well, she actually helped me schedule mine. And she gave me the information about how certain websites worked. So I want to thank her for that and all that she's done for 44203.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, I have a couple things here. Mr. Jaber talked about a cleanup. I believe, I'm not sure, I'll find out, the city cleanup date, I believe, is April 24th. And that might be a good time to set that up. I will look into that. Another thing is, happens every year, I get calls about this time of year about the yard sale, the city yard sale. It's usually the second weekend of June. Last year it wasn't because of COVID, but this year it'll be June 10th through the 13th. So that's Thursday through Sunday. And nobody needs to get a permit for their yard sale. And last but not least, next week we will have our legislative meeting at 6 o'clock. And that's all it will be legislative meeting. So you're all going to be there anyway, but just reminding you. Anything else from anybody?
This is the Parks and Rec Director. The 24th is the day that we have set for the cleanup, April 24th.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll get back to you about that, sir.
Okay.
Okay. Mr. Greer?
Yeah, I just wanted to, if I may, follow up with Mr. Patterson about typically with the city cleanup, they registered volunteers and locations. Do we plan on doing that this year?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
I'll work with Mr. Patterson on that one. We'll get it together.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay. Anybody else? Without any ado, it is 7:37 and we are adjourned. And I have my hammer back. Okay, we'll go right into our finance report. And I think we're almost done. I don't think this one's going to last very long. So, Mr. Mayor, it's all yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, City Council, as I mentioned, I received one email question this weekend. I didn't send that out an email, responded today to Councilwoman Fry. But I'll just open it up to council. And if you have any questions, we can go through them.
Mr. President?
Yes?
I have just a couple of questions.
Okay.
The first one, well, I want to start by asking if the mayor found out whether or not the project impact, the $15,000 that was being transferred from rental registration, was only for rental, or if that was just for project impact in general.
Per the legislation, it's for project impact in general. So those funds can be used for any property, or wait, let me read this here, conforms to the improvement of housing, infrastructure, and administration within the city. So that's how the money can be used. So it can be used in project impact on any home.
Okay. On page 37, on miscellaneous license and permit. I'm just wondering what falls under that umbrella of budget of revenue, because I just was curious what that entailed, and then why we collected significantly more than we anticipated for 2020, and we budgeted back to what we collected or what we budgeted in 2020.
I'm going to have to look into that and get back to you. I don't have those notes in front of me, so I'll have to look into that. That's the miscellaneous license and permits.
Okay, yes. And then on that same page, page 37, under the skill-based machines, the actual revenue that we collected for 2020 was $47,400. And we budgeted for 2021 $38,000. I'm just wondering why we didn't, what accounted for reducing the amount that we budgeted.
Well, if you look at previous years, the outlier is 2020 with the actual. So we typically collect around $38,000. So working with the finance director, that's what we felt comfortable.
Okay.
Obviously, if we collect more than the budget, that's great.
Okay. I guess I just thought that would just indicate the number of machines, so perhaps the number of machines grew, because that's how we acquire the money.
Yeah, that number of machines can go up and down. So.
Okay. And then on page 13, sorry, I'm getting there. There is a $75,000 interfund transaction to the street operating fund. I was just wondering, is that coming from income tax, or is that coming from one of our other special road programs?
Let me see here just a moment. Which fund was that?
It's Fund 202.
202.
Yeah, that's just a transfer from the income tax to the street operating fund.
Okay.
We used to do like $500,000 or $600,000, but with the increase in gas tax, we haven't needed to do that much. But we haven't actually seen what our actual increase in gas tax is going to be yet, because last year was supposed to be the first year, but with COVID, I don't think it was a real good realization of what it could be.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Tracy.
Yep.
And then on page 39, the total fees, the revenue of those. Does that include, so in 2020, our actual that we collected was $85,942. Is that the towing, impounding fees, and also the sale of the vehicles? Is that all of it?
I believe that's just the towing and impound fees, but I'll have to verify that.
Mrs. DeBevick, that is just the towing and impound fees. The whenever they scrap impounded vehicles, it goes into miscellaneous revenue in the general fund.
Okay.
And then to also answer a previous question regarding the miscellaneous permits,
Yes.
and what those consist of, that's going to be any licenses or permits that doesn't fall in one of those line item categories. I can't think of one right off the top of my head, but basically if building department takes in a license or some sort of permit and it doesn't meet the criteria of like a plumbing permit or an electric permit or something like that, it will get put into that fund. I do know at the start of COVID, everyone was doing construction projects because they were at home and they had all this free time on their hands. So that's why when I was projecting the revenue for that, I kind of reverted it back to quote unquote normal years, because how much of that was driven because of people doing all those home improvement projects at the start of COVID.
Okay. So Jeremy, where's the miscellaneous fund that you talked to? Where would I find that in here? Just for, I'm not going to look right now, but just for future.
It would be on page 40. Okay. The account number is 101-0000-48010.
Okay. Okay, thank you. And then, so, Jeremy, let me ask you this then. On the same page, on page 40, sale of assets / gov deals, is that where the money will go from the current sale that we just had? Or we just not use that?
I'm gonna start making sure that stuff does get recorded into that line item. That way we can keep a little bit better track of what we're getting off of gov deals on assets that were purchased using general fund money.
Okay.
Yeah, we sold a couple in utilities when I was down there, but it just goes right back to utilities. It doesn't go into the 101.
I mean, I'm all for going back to whatever department sold the goods. You know, that's not. I just was wondering because we have shown no activity there since 2015. Well, we have shown no activity in that fund. That's all I have for now.
Excuse me.
Yes.
The cars that we just sold on GovDeal, is that what you were referring to, Carla?
Yes, but we've sold other things on Gov Deals. We have a line item on, right? Yes. So that wouldn't be
cars. The car sales, doesn't that go back to the police department towards their vehicles as opposed to our general fund? If those are the impound cars.
No, because they're paid for out of the general fund, correct, Mr. Flake?
No. I'm talking about the impound cars.
Yeah, the impound cars, the scrap that we receive from those impound cars goes into the general fund revenue.
Okay.
And our police cruisers are paid out of the general fund.
Okay, thank you. Now I got it straight. Brain not engaged.
I just have one last question when we're talking about the rental registration. Does AMHA pay rental registration for each of their units, or how do they pay?
Yes, they do.
Okay.
Yes.
Each unit.
Each unit. Okay. Awesome.
They're a big contributor.
Sure. Yes. Okay. That's all. Those are all the questions I have. Thank you.
All right. If no other questions, if anyone has anything over the week, give me an email, give me a shout out, and get that answered. and send it to the rest of council.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that's it.
Thank you.
Anybody else have anything?
No, sir.
Okay, we'll see you next Monday at 6 o'clock.
Thank you.
Carla,
All right, all.
is that your first shot